Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. So today's video I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in November. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So I read 14 books in November. I actually read a series back to back from book 1 to book 4. I read a duology. I had a good time. I didn't have the best, I didn't have loads of 5 stars in some sense. The 5 stars I gave were like rereads and stuff like that. But I had a good reading month. I read a lot, not as many books as I usually do, but I read a lot considering what's been going on and everything. So yeah, I'm not doing it in any particular order. I'm just going to go through the books that were either on my Kindle or they were library books. They've all gone back now. But I will start with the series I read. So me and another bookstagrammer, Lucy, who you hear me talk a lot about, we do buddy reads. We did all like the Fairy Loop buddy reads, especially when I did my vlogs and stuff. But obviously she knows I stopped doing that. So I said, you know, we can continue on reading the Fairy Loop books if we wanted to, or we could read books that we own that might not primarily be Fairy Loop. And so we decided to read 2 books, 2 like little paperbacks that were fantasy, like YA fantasy, because that's what I'm like reading at the minute. And so we decided to read the Hush Hush series by Becca Fitzpatrick. I actually owned the first book and the last book, but I had book 2 and book 3 on my Kindle. So I primarily was just going to read the first book and leave it like that. But the first book was that good that I was like, I need to know what happens, because it left on a cliffhanger, and I was like, nope, I need to know what's going on. And so I ended up reading all 4 books in the series. So the first book was Hush Hush, which we follow, I can't even remember now because I read it more at the beginning of November. Basically we follow a human girl and a fallen angel, and they fall in love, and then it's like all forbidden rumors. Basically the first book was amazing, 5 stars. I had the best time. I read it in one day. I literally picked it at the beginning of November and finished it later on that evening. I read it in one sitting, and it was just what I needed. It was just your perfect YA angel fantasy with obviously romance. And I loved the characters. So Hush Hush started off with a bang. I was like, brilliant. And I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to continue on with the series. And Lucy did the same. And then I read book 2, and which was Crescendo. And I think for me, and it's like, I love the first book purely by, I can't remember the main character's name now. Patch was the fallen angel, and I can't remember what her name was now. That's annoying. Maybe, was it Grey? No, it wasn't Grey. Oh, I can't remember. I will put it down and it might come to me as I'm talking. But I love their romance, and like it was sort of, they finally got together near the end of book 1, and I was like, yes. And then book 2, it started off really good, and then stupidness just happened, and then these 2 characters break up, and then other things go on, and I don't know, whether it was because I rooted for their romance and that's what I really liked about the book, whether that's why I didn't love it as much as the first book. I gave it 4 stars because, again, I read it in one sitting and I did enjoy it. And for me, like, it really picked up near the end because, yeah. And then book 3, I did not like book 3 at all. I gave that 3.75 on Storygraph. I liked it in the sense that it had more action in. I couldn't fault that. It did have more action in it. But what I didn't like was the whole, she forgot everything, or she had her memories sort of erased or repressed in some sense. And it got really annoying that they finally got a potential, like, you know, they could get together, and I kind of was like, you know, it would be Lem versus all the rest of the angels and the fallen angels and all that. But it didn't. It went back to, who are you, like having that attraction, but like, oh, it was like the forbidden bit, and it just, some of the bits I was just like, oh, for God's sake, no. And then like the ending was brilliant. Like, I absolutely loved the ending. That was fantastic. And like, you know, that really made me think, right, I'm sure book 5 I'm gonna look, and book 4, sorry. And I loved book 4 because Patch and our main character, they got together. It was a proper forbidden love because she's a angel, whereas he's a fallen angel, and they're not meant to thing. And like she's like she has to rule her angels and all of that. And it was very action packed, but also I like the fact that they were together, like regardless that they weren't meant to be together, they stuck together, they stayed together, they loved each other and all of that. And I was just like, finally I get what I got given in the first book. But yeah, I did love the series. It was very quick and easy, just what you need. Like, you know, I do have a secret love for like fantasies that have to do with like vampires or angels, like I do, or werewolves actually. I quite like the supernatural fantasy side of things rather than like the fae and that kind of, or like witches or that magic system in fantasy. So I like that, and it's been a while since I read a book about angels and fallen angels. I particularly loved the Fallen series, which I really need to reread because it's been a long time since I read that. But yeah, at the end of the day, like I loved the characters. I rooted for the characters. I really liked the romance, and there was just, it sounds strange, I just wanted the romance to either be together or not together. Like it's just stupid backwards and forwards, and the stupid pettiness, and like the teenage, like the young adult bit that you have. Yeah, it was just little bits there. But at the end of the day, I read 4 books in a 4-book series in a week, maybe less than a week to be honest. I did have the best time. And then also alongside reading Hush Hush, we decided to read the first book in the Shatter Me series by I can't remember her name now. Is it Savata here? Oh, I can't remember now. I did start reading Shatter Me either the end of 2021 or it might have been the beginning of this year. I can't remember. I had the book and I started reading it. I think it was last year, to be honest. I did start reading it and I didn't like it. And I think for me, I didn't like it because of how it was written. And I think I may have missed out the beginning bit where the author explains why it's written the way it is. I think I didn't read that bit to understand why. I started reading it and I wasn't keen. Whether I think for me at the time I was reading high fantasy, I was reading adult fantasy, and for me the YA fantasy side of things, it was just a bit naff for me. I think now, because I'm more into my YA fantasy at the moment, just because it's an easier and quicker read, I think probably that's why I maybe gave it a shot and enjoyed it in some sense. Like the start of the book, once I got used to I can't even remember what the character's name was even now. But basically, once I got into the whole how our main character's thought process are, how her language is, and like all to do these numbers and stuff like that. Once I got used to that in like the first like 2-3 chapters, like I started getting quite interested. And obviously, she's in a prison. She had another like person in her prison, and all of that. I don't want to go into it, but I'm sure everyone's read it and knows what happens. It started off strong, and then for me it went downhill. I gave it 3 stars purely because I did read it in one sitting, and the beginning bit and like this sort of twists and how it ended, I was like, ooh. Like, here's the thing, am I intrigued enough to continue reading the series? Possibly. Like, I could possibly pick up the books from the library and read them, purely because I am curious to see how it pans out and everything. But there's a lot of books in the series, and from looking at reviews and seeing reviews on BookTube and stuff like that, a lot of people said like the first 3 books were good, and then the remaining like 3 books, I think it's 6 books, the remaining 3 books, it was pointless, like it wasn't needed. So I'm a bit like, oh, I don't know, like I don't know, it piqued my interest in some bits. Like the beginning bit was done really well. I felt like the middle bit and everything, I just felt it was sort of repeated. Like the whole she can touch him but she can't touch him, and the whole scenario she had with her captor and all of that, I just felt it was repeated constantly. There was nothing new. We knew she could touch a certain person but she can't touch the rest. We know that this other person, all right, and it just felt like it was constantly said, and I went, well, you know, move on from that, like do something different, what else is happening? And nothing changed. And then obviously when she escapes with this person who's like her love interest, you know, that like started picking up because, you know, there was action going on, and then there was twists there, and then there was another twist, and then like the ending is she's now at this place where there are actually other people who've got abilities not like hers, but abilities like, you know, some people can really stretch, some people can go through walls, some people, you know, all of that sort of thing. And I like that, and how it ended, I was sort of like, right, I do want to know how this whole plays out, because we've got like normal humans to the ones who have these special powers. So it has piqued my interest in the sense like I'm curious to see how it pans out, but I'm also at that bit of like I'm not overly bothered either if I don't read it. So yeah, I'm a bit like hit and miss. Like there were bits that I did love, and there were bits where I was like, that could have either been taken out or what, or changed, because it just felt that it was being said the same thing over and over again, but just in different little ways. In that, if that makes sense. And then I did read a duology. So I read Vicious and Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. I actually did start reading Vicious a while back, and again, I just wasn't vibing with it. I think purely because I wasn't in a YA fantasy mood at the time. And I also think it was my first book I tried by V.E. Schwab, and I just wasn't used to her writing at that time. But I've obviously now read, oh my god, what was it called? Gallant. I read that and absolutely loved it, and not a lot of people like that one. And I did start reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and again I enjoyed like her writing, and so I've gotten used to her writing. So I tried this again, absolutely loved Vicious. It was like the proper supernatural dark academy vibes. I absolutely loved Victor, and Eli is just really like I like them both, and I kind of was like I shouldn't like either of them because they're quite nasty people. The first book I loved, from start to finish. I couldn't put it down. There were so many twists and turns that I wasn't expecting, and I was like, after reading the first book, I was like, I need to get the second book from the library, and I did. And then I picked it up, and it just didn't do it for me. So Vicious got a 4.5, only because there was a bit in the middle that lagged for me. There was just not much going on, and I was just like, oh, it just got a bit boring. And that's why I didn't get the full 5 stars, just because there wasn't much action. It was more just looking for someone, or like planning things, and it just got a little bit like, oh, come on, I want to see more EOs. I want a bit more action. I want a bit more of this vengefulness that Victor has towards Eli and stuff. That's why I didn't get the full 5 stars, but it really was a stunner of a starter of a book. And then I started Vengeful, and I'm going to be totally honest, I didn't read it properly. I skim read quite a bit. I pretty much just really focused on the beginning and like the last like third of the book. I think for me, we had like an extra character in, and we were focusing more on her journey. And to me, it felt like Victor and Eli's characters were more in the background. And I just wanted it to mainly just be Victor and Eli. I just wanted that who's gonna make it out alive sort of thing. And I didn't completely understand that ending. Now, whether that's because I skim read the book and didn't really read it from start to finish to understand the full story, or what, but it ending for me just, I didn't get it. I was like, oh, is that it? Like, okay, so what's gone on here? It left me, I didn't like the extra character in. I wasn't keen on the extra character, so I don't think that helped. And I don't know, it was just something about it that missed the mark for me. And it was a more chunkier book, and I don't think it needed to be that chunky. But I gave that a 3.75, so still a decent rating compared to what I can do. And then, not going into too full details, but I do like to read the Harry Potter books around Christmas time. So I had read book 1, 2 and 3 earlier on this year. So I wanted to carry on finishing the series. I actually got Harry Potter and Goblet of Fire and Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I found all of the books in the library, and I was just like, do you know what? I just want to read them, because at the moment I wanted to buy the books secondhand, purely for my daughter later on when she's older. but I couldn't find it anywhere. I didn't want to buy it from a shop because obviously I didn't want to support J.K. Rowling either. So in the end, I ended up getting the books from the library. So I read Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix. Both got 5 stars. I rereads for me. And after reading the first 3 books and not 100% sure whether I was going to love it, because now I'm an adult, I thought, oh, am I going to? But no, I equally love it. I may even love them even more because I understand some things. But yeah, I read them. I'm hoping to read the last 2 books in December, but they are chunky books, so we shall see. And then I also read, I actually was on a review tour with Pride Book Tours. Now, you would know that I used to do a lot of these tours, but then they got a bit out of hand, and so I completely stopped. But Pride Book Tours, I still do get emails from, and like I don't really look, but this particular book really caught my eye, and I was just like, actually, I quite like the sound of it. So I was like, actually, I'll sign up for it, see if I get it, and I did. So it's called Parasites by Ridley Hacker, and this is a YA LGBTQI plus horror. I would say there's some like sci-fi elements in it too, but basically we follow Jack, who is transgender, and he, I want to say he's depressed, but he just hates his life. He is lonely. He has not really any friends. He's like a major victim to really nasty bullying. His parents are alcoholics. I'm not fully sure whether his dad was abusive or whether the abuse actually was from the bullies. But we know that he is getting abused. We know that he's had enough basically. But basically, we follow him, and then a new guy comes in, and he's very strange. Like, he doesn't eat. He seems to only drink from this particular cup, but you don't know what it is. Also, like, he seems to be heal very quickly and stuff. He's very odd and quirky and obsessed with anatomy and things like that. And ever since this boy comes into this island, lots of strange things happen. Some people go missing, some people are found dead, some people have a complete personality change. Specifically, Jack's tormentor, his bully tormentor, all of a sudden turns really like nice and all of this, and it's just, you're thinking, okay, and then it starts happening to everyone else. Like, other people start to all of a sudden act really strange and stuff, and it's sort of possibly linked to this boy. And obviously we have the romance. It was the most atmospheric, eerie book I've read in a while. Like, it's not an overly long book, but the atmosphere, like how the author describes things, was amazing. The character development was really good too. I love the romance, but what I really loved the most was Jack's character. Well, all of the characters were well developed, and all of the characters, like even the side characters, you sort of got to know them and understood why they're probably the way they are and stuff. Like, usually when you have you might have like a main character, or you might have 2 main characters, like perspective, and then you have just like these characters here and there, but you don't really know much about it. The author actually did it so you did actually get a bit of background of characters. You're not focusing on them, but you sort of understand them, you sort of know why the way they are and all this thing. So it had that full circle that sometimes you don't always get in books. And yeah, it was Jack's character. Like, he's obviously transgender. He's going through his change. Like, he's on hormone, or he's on hormone medicine, but it's what he's stolen from someone and it's not working. He wears a band around himself and then a sports bra, and like he will never go without either. And just like how he's trying to, be his authentic self, to be his true self, to be him, to be Jack. But he's either getting ridiculed for it, his parents still want him to be Jackie, and all of that. And then obviously he's got these feelings for this boy, and yeah, it's just, his character was well done. And yeah, it's one of those books that if you like your YA horror, you like the eerie atmosphere, and you like good representation, this one's for you. I did feel like there was a bit too much going on at times, and I got a little bit like, okay, what's going on here? And the ending, there was some bits that I think could have been polished a bit better, but regardless of that, I really enjoyed it. I really recommend it, especially if you do like your horror. And I gave that 4 stars. And then I'm just going on to the rest of the books here. So I decided, because I had a little bit of a slumpy bit where I just couldn't decide what to read, and I was like, do you know what, I want to reread ACOTAR again. So I did read the first 2 books in ACOTAR beginning of this year, and I always feel like I like reading them around Christmas time, just because it's just got that dark, dreary, depressing vibes. So I reread A Court of Wings and Ruin. It's self-explanatory, you know how much I love the series. I still love it. It was a 5-star read, and yeah, it literally, I read it in one day. I love the book, and it just instantly made me feel so much better. And then because of that, I was like, I'm going to continue on reading. So I then read A Court of Frost and Starlight. This is only a short book. This is probably not my favourite of them all, because this is generally just more of a celebration, a little reprieve for the whole gang, but also I think to sort of start you getting into the next book from this, because obviously we sort of have that bit about Nessa and like Elaine, and how the roles reversed and Nessa's gone all funny, and like it's sort of, I think, at the starter book for A Court of Silver Flames, which I am currently reading. I'm halfway, and I am going to read it through December, but I think I'm going to read it around like nearly after Christmas, because I want to sort of read the Christmassy books for the like lead up to Christmas, and then after, like on Box Day onwards, I just want to read normal books. And then I also read Princess of Souls by Alexandra Christo. I really love this book. So basically it's sort of a Rapunzel retelling in some sense. Basically we follow Celestia, who is heir to this really powerful magic, but she is locked in this kingdom, in this castle, in a tower by her king, that basically once her mum dies, she will then take over her mum's role and basically be alongside the king, feeding him souls so he's immortal, because basically she can find their future, see their death, and then she can collect the souls, but actually can't. Yeah. And then we follow a soldier who is part of the king's army, but he's actually undercover. He's actually there to bring the kingdom down and bring them all down, because the king killed his father. But he ends up going in for this basically he, like every year they have these whole this like sort of game thing that they will see into their souls, see their future, see their death, and then they've got like a month to try and stay alive. If they die, then their soul goes to the king and feeds his immortality. Nox wants to sort of get undercover, and he decides to play along and do this, but Celestia, for the first time ever, actually got to do the whole reading of his future, and it turns out the pair of them see their death, and so she's tied to Nox, and basically she wants to save Nox, because if he dies, she dies. And then there's this whole thing going on, but obviously we have a romance, and then obviously Celestia is more powerful than we think, and that actually she believes that her true powers will come when her mum dies, but actually in fact they've been repressing her powers and doormatting them, and then she soon realizes actually had them all along and all that. It was really, really good. I loved the romance. It was an enemies to lovers, which I love. The witchcraft, the magic, and I think anything to do with death in fantasy is my kind of jam at the minute. And it ended in a way where it could just be one book, and it was brilliant, or it could be that actually it's ended in a way where you might possibly be able to have another book. I don't know whether there's going to be more than one book. I hope there is. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. And considering this author did the book To Kill a Kingdom, and I read that, and I started reading it. I think I read about 70 pages and DNF'd it. I'm actually glad to give her a try. And I do have other books by the author that I would like to read, because I feel like To Kill a Kingdom I probably didn't like because it's to do with moments and never been a thing, but the other books that I've seen by her aren't. But yeah, I love this book. I read it in one sitting, 5 stars. I definitely want to read more. And then Nasty, I read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This was my, was it Fairy Loot or Illumicrate? Fairy Loot. This was my Fairy Loot edition for October. And when I read the blurb, I was like, I want to read it. And so I ended up thinking, screw it, I'm going to read it. But basically we follow Elspeth, who basically we're in this world where there is, they have it's like a tarot card sort of fantasy. It's very interesting, very unique. Not a book I've ever read before. I want more. But basically we're in a world where they have these Providence cards, and these Providence cards have got magic. And on top of that, they in this world they've also got this like plague going on, and the people who get this plague like burn up, they have a fever, they have dark veins, and some of them get magic from it, and some of them just turn outrightly crazy. But everyone who has this sort of plague basically gets slaughtered. But we follow Elspeth, who actually happens to have this plague, but she managed to live through it. And so her father, who is, hang on, what are they called? I can't remember what they're called now. Her father, who is, I'm going to say a soldier, but it's like a soldier who like kills anyone who's got the plague and finds these Providence cards and all that. Her father ships her away to his deceased wife's sister for her to bring up, and for like them to hide that she has this disease and all of that. But what no one knows apart from her is actually one day she found her uncle's Providence card, and it was the Nightmare card. And she obviously didn't know that she had magic. Like there was no like magic that she like, you know, the simple magic that you see. But she saw the Providence card, and she touched it, and actually her magic power is she absorbs the magic from the Providence card. So she touched a nightmare, and a nightmare went into her, and then so for 11 years she's had this nightmare monster living inside her, and like they mind speak and all that. But his part of his power is he can see the Providence cards. They have like their Providence cards, their magic, they actually glow, and they've all got different glows. So she actually can see he's carrying a Providence card without actually them like revealing it. And basically she's been told to go to this solstice thing with the king, and she sort of meets Knox, which is one of the soldiers, but he actually is living a double life. And actually he's infected too, and his power is that apart from he can't get controlled by Providence cards, but he also can't use the Providence cards apart from the Nightmare card and the Twins card and one more. So he's got that, but like his brother, his brother has also got the disease, but he's actually quite crazy because he can see the future and all that, and the king is trying to use the brother to use his blood as a sacrifice to get like the remaining Providence cards out there, because he wants to collect all the Providence cards to try and get rid of the mist, but actually he's not using it for that, he's using it for something else. So basically we have these two who end up combined working together. They believe her power is that she can see the Providence cards like where they are by the glow and all of that, but it turns out actually obviously there's more to her. Like her power is actually because she's got the nightmare in her. And yeah, like we've got like a sort of enemies to lovers romance. The magic system's amazing, like the tarot cards are really good. And how this book ended, I need the second one. I know that this is a series, I don't know like when, but when you look at the book it says book 1, so I am assuming that it's going to be a series. But Elspeth, our main character, is brilliant. I loved her from the start. I absolutely hated some of her family members, I'm not going to lie, and I also hated like the king's family members, like his heirs and stuff like that. They were annoying, but like at the same time you can't help. I loved it from start to finish. The ending, I didn't, there was a major twist. There were two major twists. One of them I had an inkling and I was right, but then what I loved about it was another twist happened, and I didn't feel so downhearted that I already guessed it. basically, in hindsight, our main character may or may not be alive, and I love how that it ended. If you haven't read this book, you need to. It's brilliant. I thoroughly loved it. I hope that there's going to be a series, and I hope that it comes out soon because I need to know what happened. But it was a brilliant read. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I just randomly chose to pick it up. That and Princess of Souls were the two books I just randomly thought, I'm in the mood to read them, let's read them. They worked well because they were instant 5 stars. But yeah, they're the books that I read. I am planning to do a December TBR just purely because it's the last month of the whole of 2022, and I just thought it'd be nice just to end the start of my year to, like, you know, I've obviously been here and there, but I am planning to do December TBR. It's going to be a big one, but I'm not going to read all of them. I'm hoping to put some of them in January, but it depends because I start my uni stuff in January. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye.